The kitchen smelled of wilted flowers and cold gravy when they pointed me toward the folding chair wedged between the service door and the industrial dishwasher. "Just for tonight," my aunt whispered, not meeting my eyes. "You understand?" I understood perfectly. I was the family embarrassment, the one who'd chosen love over money, dreams over duty, the one who'd married a teacher instead of a banker, who'd moved to a small town instead of staying in the city where reputations mattered. The one who'd shown up to my cousin Rebecca's wedding in a dress from Target while everyone else wore designer gowns that cost more than my monthly rent. The kitchen door swung open and closed with each server's entrance, giving me glimpses of the reception I wasn't invited to join. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in ivory silk. My family laughed and clinked glasses filled with champagne that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. Rebecca looked radiant in her $10,000 dress, her new husband James beaming beside her as photographers captured every perfect moment. I picked at the plate of cold chicken they'd brought me, listening to the muffled sounds of celebration through the wall. My mother's laugh rang out above the others, the same laugh she'd withheld from me for 3 years now. The same laugh she'd stopped sharing the day I told her I was happy with my simple life, that I didn't need her approval or her money to feel whole. "Ma'am," a young server paused beside my chair, balancing a tray of empty glasses. "Are you family?" "Supposedly," I said, managing a smile that felt like broken glass. She glanced toward the dining room, then back at me. "My grandmother always said the kitchen is where the real heart of any celebration lives. The fancy dining room is just for show." I watched her disappear through the swinging doors, her words settling over me like a warm blanket. The kitchen was alive with quiet efficiency, servers moving in practiced rhythm, the head chef calling out orders, steam rising from warming trays. There was something honest about this space, something real that the polished reception room lacked. Through the service window, I could see James standing now, raising his champagne flute. The room fell silent, faces turning toward him with expectant smiles. My chest tightened. Even from here, relegated to the shadows, I could see the love in his eyes as he looked at Rebecca. It reminded me of how David looked at me every morning over coffee, how he'd looked at me on our own wedding day in the courthouse with just 2 witnesses and a bouquet of grocery store daisies. "Before I toast my beautiful bride," James began, his voice carrying clearly through the kitchen's service window, "I need to acknowledge someone who made this day possible." My aunt shifted in her seat. My mother's smile faltered slightly. Rebecca's face remained serene, but I caught the tiny crease between her eyebrows. "Someone who taught me what real love looks like, what it means to choose happiness over expectation." James's eyes swept the room, and for a moment, I thought I saw them pause on the kitchen door. Someone who showed me that a marriage built on genuine affection and respect matters more than one built on social climbing and family approval. The silence in the dining room stretched thin as wire. I set down my fork, my heart beginning to race. "Rebecca," James continued, his voice gentle but firm, "I've watched your family tonight. I've seen how they treat the people they claim to love. And I've realized something important." He paused, the weight of his words settling over the room like snow. "I can't marry into a family that would seat someone in the kitchen simply because she chose love over money." The champagne flute trembled in his hand. The kitchen fell silent around me. Even the servers stopped moving, their eyes fixed on the service window where we could see James still standing, his champagne flute catching the light like a beacon. "What is he doing?" Rebecca's voice cut through the silence, sharp and brittle. James set down his glass with deliberate care. "I'm making a choice, Rebecca. The same choice your cousin made 3 years ago when she married for love instead of status." His eyes found the kitchen door, and somehow, I knew he could see me through the narrow window. "The same choice I should have made months ago when I first saw how your family treated her." My hands shook as I gripped the edge of my folding chair. The head chef had stopped calling orders. The dishwasher stood motionless, soap suds dripping from his gloves. Even the ice machine seemed to hold its breath. "James, please." Rebecca's voice cracked. "Don't do this. Not here. Not now." But he was already moving, walking away from the head table, past the shocked faces of my relatives, past my mother's open mouth and my aunt's horrified expression. The kitchen door swung open, And there he was, tall and kind-faced, still wearing his boutonniere, still looking like a groom except for the sadness in his eyes. "I'm sorry you had to sit in here," he said quietly. "I'm sorry it took me this long to understand what kind of family I was marrying into." I stood slowly, my legs unsteady. "James, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." He looked back toward the dining room where Rebecca sat frozen in her wedding dress, mascara beginning to streak down her cheeks. "I've been watching all night, watching how they whisper about you, how they act like you're contagious, watching your mother pretend you don't exist while she brags about Rebecca's engagement ring." The servers had quietly slipped away, giving us space in the suddenly cavernous kitchen. Steam still rose from the warming trays, but the celebration beyond the doors had died to murmurs and shifting chairs. "3 months ago, I asked Rebecca about you," James continued, "about why you never came to family dinners, why your name never came up in conversation. She told me you'd made your choices and had to live with the consequences." He shook his head. "But tonight, seeing you exiled to the kitchen like some shameful secret, I realized the only shameful thing here is how they've treated you." Through the service window, I could see my family's faces: confusion, anger, embarrassment painting their features in harsh strokes. My mother had stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. My uncle was gesturing frantically, probably trying to salvage the situation, to convince James this was all a misunderstanding. "You should go back," I whispered. "This is your wedding day." "No," James said firmly. "This was supposed to be my wedding day. But I can't marry someone who would let her family treat you like this. I can't build a life with someone who thinks love should come with conditions and price tags." The kitchen door burst open. Rebecca stood there in her elaborate gown, her veil askew, her face flushed with anger and desperation. "James, what are you doing? She's nobody. She chose to leave the family. She chose her little teacher husband over us. She chose love," James said simply. "And watching her tonight, seeing her dignity in the face of your family's cruelty, I realized she chose right." Rebecca's eyes darted between us, wild and desperate. "You're throwing away everything we planned, everything we built together. For what? For her? For the principle she represents," James replied. "For the kind of person I want to be, the kind of person I thought you were." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. In the dining room beyond, I could hear chairs scraping, voices rising in heated whispers. The carefully orchestrated celebration was unraveling, thread by thread. Rebecca's face crumpled. "Please, James, we can fix this. We can invite her to sit with the family. We can. It's too late for that," he said gently. "This isn't about where she sits tonight. This is about who you are when you think no one important is watching." He turned back to me, his expression soft with regret. "I'm sorry this happened to you. I'm sorry it took your cousin's wedding falling apart for someone in your family to finally stand up for you." The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I sat in my Target dress in a hotel kitchen, watching a man I barely knew defend my worth while my own blood relatives had spent 3 years pretending I didn't exist. The kitchen's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in stark relief: the industrial surfaces, the abandoned wedding cake waiting to be served, the bride in her ruined dress standing in the doorway like a broken doll. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. James looked toward the dining room one last time, then back at Rebecca. "Now I go home, and I think about what kind of life I really want to build." He walked past Rebecca without another word, past the shocked servers who had gathered in the hallway, past the dining room full of guests who sat frozen in their expensive clothes and their expensive judgment. The kitchen door swung shut behind him, leaving Rebecca and me alone with the smell of cold food and wilted flowers. She stared at me for a long moment, her carefully applied makeup streaking down her cheeks. "Are you happy now?" she whispered. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt something other than hurt when I saw my cousin's face. I felt pity. "No," I said honestly. "I'm not happy that your wedding day ended this way, but I'm not sorry that someone finally saw what you've all been doing to me." Rebecca's shoulders sagged. The fight went out of her all at once, leaving her looking small and lost in her enormous dress. "We never meant." "Yes, you did," I said quietly. "You meant every slight, every exclusion, every whispered comment about my choices. You meant to make me feel ashamed of choosing love over money, happiness over status. The kitchen door opened again, and my mother appeared, her face pale and drawn. "Rebecca, honey, we need to." She stopped when she saw me, her eyes flickering with something that might have been shame. "The guests are asking questions. Let them ask," I said, standing up from my folding chair for the last time. "Let them wonder why the groom walked away from a family that seats their own daughter in the kitchen." My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "You don't understand the position you've put us in, the position I've put you in." The words came out sharper than I intended. "I've been sitting in kitchens and empty rooms for 3 years, Mother. The only position I've put you in is the one where you have to face what you've become." I walked toward the door, past Rebecca in her ruined dress, past my mother with her guilty eyes. The dining room had mostly emptied now, guests filing out in uncomfortable silence. Their evening of celebration turned into something they'd whisper about for years to come. At the exit, I paused and looked back one last time at the scene I was leaving behind: the abandoned head table, the untouched wedding cake, the family that had spent so much energy pushing me away that they'd forgotten to hold on to what mattered. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I could breathe. The parking lot stretched before me like a dark ocean, punctuated by islands of light from the hotel's exterior lamps. My hands trembled as I searched through my purse for my phone, muscle memory guiding me to David's number. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, sweetheart, how's the wedding?" His voice was warm, familiar, like coming home after a long journey through foreign territory. I closed my eyes, letting his voice wash over me. "It's over." "Over? But it's only 9:30. Did something happen?" Where could I even begin? How could I explain that a stranger had defended me more fiercely than my own family ever had? That my cousin's wedding had imploded because someone finally called out 3 years of systematic cruelty disguised as family loyalty? "The groom walked away," I said simply. "He saw how they treated me tonight and couldn't go through with it." Silence stretched across the phone line. Then, quietly, "What did they do?" "They sat me in the kitchen, David. Like I was the help. Like I was something to be hidden away." The words came out in a rush now. 3 years of swallowed hurt finally finding voice. And when James saw it, when he realized what kind of family he was marrying into, he just left. "Jesus." David's voice was tight with anger. "I should have come with you. I should never have let you face them alone. You had parent conferences. And honestly, I needed to see this for myself. I needed to understand that it wasn't going to get better, that they weren't going to change." A car door slammed somewhere behind me, followed by the sound of heels clicking rapidly across asphalt. I turned to see my aunt hurrying toward me, her face flushed and desperate. "Wait," she called out. "Please, just wait." I held up a finger to indicate I was on the phone, but she kept approaching. "David, I need to go. My aunt is here. Do you want me to come get you?" The offer was tempting. David would drive the 2 hours to get me, would wrap me in his arms and take me home to our small house with its mismatched furniture and overflowing bookshelves. But something in me needed to finish this conversation, needed to hear what my aunt had to say after 3 years of silence. "No, I'm okay. I'll drive home tonight. I love you. I love you too, and I'm proud of you for staying as long as you did." I hung up and faced my aunt, this woman who had helped raise me, who had braided my hair and taught me to bake cookies, who had stopped speaking to me the day I chose my own path. "You can't just leave like this," she said breathlessly. "The family is in chaos. Rebecca is hysterical." "Your mother?" "My mother what?" I asked. "My mother is embarrassed. My mother is angry. My mother is finally facing the consequences of 3 years of treating her own daughter like a stranger." My aunt's face crumpled. "We never meant for it to go this far. We thought if we showed you what you were missing, you'd come back. You'd realize your mistake." "My mistake?" The laugh that escaped me was bitter as winter wind. "My mistake was thinking family meant unconditional love. My mistake was believing that choosing happiness over status would eventually be forgiven. You married beneath you," she said desperately. "You could have had so much more. You could have married Richard Thornton's son, could have had the house in Westchester, the life we all dreamed of for you. I never dreamed of that life, I said quietly. You did. You dreamed of bragging rights and social status and a daughter-in-law you could show off at country club luncheons. But that was never my dream. The hotel's automatic doors whooshed open behind her, and more family members spilled out into the parking lot. My uncle, my mother, my cousin Mark with his wife trailing behind. They formed a loose semicircle around us, their formal wear looking ridiculous in the harsh parking lot lights. This is all your fault, my mother said, her voice shaking with rage. You ruined Rebecca's wedding. You destroyed her happiness. I didn't do anything, I replied calmly. I sat in the kitchen where you put me and ate the cold chicken you gave me. James made his own choice based on what he witnessed. You could have stayed home, Uncle Robert said. You could have declined the invitation. I could have, I agreed. But I thought maybe after 3 years, there was a chance for reconciliation. I thought maybe my family missed me enough to treat me with basic human dignity. My cousin Mark stepped forward, his face flushed with alcohol and anger. You always thought you were better than us, didn't you? With your noble teacher husband and your simple life. You looked down on everything we worked for. I never looked down on you, I said. I just chose differently, and you punished me for it. We gave you everything, my mother said, her voice breaking. The best schools, the best opportunities, the best connections. And you threw it all away for what? For a man who makes $40,000 a year? For a life in some nowhere town where nobody knows your name? For love, I said simply. I threw it all away for love, and I'd do it again. The silence that followed was deafening. Cars passed on the highway beyond the hotel, their headlights sweeping across us like searchlights, illuminating this family tableau of dysfunction and disappointment. James was right, I continued, my voice steady now. Sure. You don't understand what love actually means. You think it's a transaction, a business arrangement where both parties benefit socially and financially. But real love is what David and I have. It's choosing each other every day, supporting each other's dreams, building something together that's bigger than the sum of its parts. Pretty words, my aunt said bitterly. But pretty words don't pay for private schools or country club memberships or retirement funds. No, they don't, I agreed. But they pay for something else. They pay for peace, for contentment, for the knowledge that the person beside you chose you for who you are, not for what you can provide or what family you come from. My mother took a step closer, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Come home, she whispered. Leave him. Come back to us. We'll find you someone suitable, someone who can give you the life you deserve. For a moment, I saw her as she used to be, the mother who had read me bedtime stories and kissed my scraped knees, who had been so proud when I graduated valedictorian, who had cried at my high school graduation. Before the disappointment, before the shame of having a daughter who chose love over status. I am home, I said gently. David is my home. Our little house with its creaky floors and overgrown garden is my home. The students who hug me in the hallway and tell me about their dreams are my family now. You gave me up, remember? You made that choice. We can fix this, she said desperately. We can make it right. I shook my head. You can't fix 3 years of silence with one conversation in a parking lot. You can't undo the damage of making me feel like I had to choose between love and family. The hotel doors opened again, and James emerged, still in his tuxedo but with his bow tie undone, his jacket slung over his arm. He looked exhausted, older than he had an hour ago. He nodded at me as he passed, a small gesture of solidarity, of shared understanding. Thank you, I called after him. He paused, turned back. Thank you, he said, for showing me what integrity looks like. My family watched him walk to his car, watched him drive away from the wreckage of his wedding day, and I saw something shift in their faces, a recognition, perhaps, of the cost of their choices, of what they had lost in their pursuit of what they thought mattered. I'm going home now, I said, pulling my car keys from my purse. To my husband who loves me for who I am, not who he thinks I should be. To my life that you've spent 3 years telling me isn't good enough. I walked toward my car, my heels clicking on the asphalt like a countdown. Behind me, I heard my mother sob, heard my aunts whispered please, heard the family I had once belonged to grappling with the consequences of their choices. At my car door, I turned back one last time. They stood there in their expensive clothes under the harsh parking lot lights, looking lost and broken and suddenly very small. "I forgive you," I said, my voice carrying across the distance between us. "But I won't forget, and I won't pretend anymore that this is love." I got in my car and drove away, leaving them standing in the wreckage of Rebecca's wedding, in the ruins of our family, in the silence they had created and would now have to live with. The highway stretched ahead of me, leading home to David, to our simple life, to the love they had never understood. In my rearview mirror, the hotel grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely, taking with it the last of my hope for reconciliation and the last of my willingness to apologize for choosing happiness over their approval. The radio played softly as I drove through the darkness, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt completely, utterly free. The drive home took me through small towns that slept peacefully under streetlights, past farmhouses with porch lights glowing like beacons in the darkness. Each mile that passed between me and the hotel felt like shedding a layer of old skin, old pain, old expectations that had never truly been mine. My phone buzzed with text messages, my mother, my aunt, even Rebecca, but I didn't look at them. Whatever they had to say could wait until I was ready to hear it, if I ever was. The silence in my car was different from the silence I'd endured for 3 years. This was peaceful, chosen mine. When I pulled into our driveway at nearly midnight, David was waiting on the front porch, still dressed in his weekend clothes, a cup of tea growing cold in his hands. The sight of him rumpled and concerned and completely, utterly real made my chest tight with gratitude. "How long have you been sitting out here?" I asked as I climbed the porch steps. "Since you called." He stood and pulled me into his arms, and I breathed in the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with the lavender soap we bought at the farmer's market. "I was worried about you driving alone after whatever happened tonight." I leaned into him, letting his warmth chase away the last of the evening's chill. "It's over, David, really over this time." He guided me inside, where he'd left the living room lamps on and a fire crackling in the fireplace. Our house welcomed me back with its comfortable chaos, books stacked on every surface, his grading papers scattered across the coffee table, the throw blanket his mother had knitted us draped over the couch where we'd fallen asleep watching movies countless times. "Tell me," he said simply, settling beside me on the couch and pulling the blanket around both of us. So I did. I told him about the kitchen, about the folding chair and the cold chicken and the way my family had looked through me like I was invisible. I told him about James's speech, about his decision to walk away, about the confrontation in the parking lot and my mother's desperate plea for me to come home. David listened without interrupting, his hand stroking my hair as I talked. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I'm sorry you had to go through that alone. I'm sorry they put you in that position." "I'm not," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. I needed to see it clearly, without you there to buffer the impact. I needed to understand that they weren't going to change, that they were never going to accept the choice I made. And now, I thought about my mother's tears, about Rebecca's ruined wedding dress, about the way my family had looked when James walked away. Now I know that choosing you, choosing this life, was the best decision I ever made. Not because it proved them wrong, but because it proved me right. David's arms tightened around me. "I love you," he said quietly. "I love your courage and your integrity and the way you've handled 3 years of their disapproval with more grace than they deserved. I love you too." I turned to face him, taking in the face I'd been waking up to for 5 years now, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, the scar on his chin from a childhood accident, the way he smiled like he couldn't quite believe his good fortune. "I love our life. I love our house and our students and our Saturday morning farmers market trips and the way you make coffee too strong and leave your socks on the bedroom floor." He laughed, the sound warm and familiar. "Even my terrible coffee?" "Especially your terrible coffee." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn down to embers. Outside, the wind rustled through the oak tree we'd planted in our backyard last spring, the one that was still small but growing stronger each season. "What do you think will happen now?" David asked. "With your family?" I considered this, thinking about the text messages still waiting on my phone, about the conversations that would inevitably follow, about the choice between forgiveness and self-preservation. "I think they'll try to fix it," I said slowly. "They'll send flowers and make phone calls and probably show up here eventually. They'll want to pretend tonight never happened, that 3 years of silence can be erased with apologies and explanations. And you? I think I'm done pretending that their love comes without conditions. I think I'm done trying to earn my place in a family that should have been mine by right." I pulled the blanket closer around us. "I think I'm exactly where I belong." The fire popped and settled, sending sparks up the chimney. In a few hours, the sun would rise on a new day, and I would wake up in my own bed next to my husband who loved me without reservation. I would make coffee in our kitchen with its mismatched mugs and cheerful yellow walls. I would tend to our garden and grade papers and live the simple, beautiful life I had chosen. "Do you think James will be okay?" David asked. I thought about the men who had walked away from everything he'd planned, who had chosen principle over convenience, who had seen the truth of my family's cruelty and refused to be part of it. "I think James will be fine," I said. "I think he learned something important tonight about the difference between love and obligation, between family and blood relation. I think he'll find someone who deserves his integrity." And Rebecca? That was harder to answer. Rebecca, who had looked so small in her expensive dress, who had built her happiness on a foundation of exclusion and judgment, who had lost everything because she couldn't see past her own privilege. "I think Rebecca will have to decide what kind of person she wants to be," I said finally. "Whether she wants to learn from this or just find someone else who won't challenge her family's values." David nodded, understanding. He had never met my family, had only heard about them through my stories and my silences, but he understood the complexity of loving people who had forgotten how to love you back. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. "For going tonight, for staying as long as you did, for walking away when you needed to, for choosing us, even when it cost you everything else." "It didn't cost me everything," I said, leaning against his shoulder. "It cost me people who never really knew me anyway. It cost me a family that loved the idea of me more than the reality. But it gave me us. Our life. Our love that doesn't come with conditions or expectations or requirements to be someone I'm not." The clock on the mantel chimed midnight, marking the end of Rebecca's wedding day, the end of my last attempt at reconciliation, the beginning of whatever came next. I thought about the kitchen where I'd sat for hours, about the folding chair and the cold chicken and the way James had looked when he realized what he was seeing. "Do you think they'll understand eventually?" David asked. "What they lost tonight." I considered this, thinking about my mother's tears, about the way my aunt's face had crumpled when I told her I forgave but wouldn't forget. "Maybe," I said, "or maybe they'll convince themselves that I'm the one who lost something. Maybe they'll tell themselves that James was wrong, that I manipulated the situation somehow, that they were the victims in all of this. Does it matter?" I thought about that question as the fire burned lower, as the house settled around us with its familiar creaks and sighs. Did it matter if they ever understood? Did it matter if they ever acknowledged the pain they'd caused, the years they'd wasted, the daughter they'd lost to their own pride? "No," I said finally. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that I know who I am. What matters is that I chose love over approval, happiness over status, truth over comfort. What matters is that I'm home." David kissed the top of my head, and I closed my eyes, letting the peace of our life together wash over me. Tomorrow there would be phone calls to ignore and decisions to make about boundaries and forgiveness. Tomorrow there would be the aftermath of tonight's revelations, the ripple effects of James's choice and my family's reckoning. But tonight, there was just this: the warmth of the fire, the comfort of David's arms, the quiet satisfaction of a choice well made and a life well lived. Tonight, there was the knowledge that I had finally, completely, chosen myself. The last ember glowed and faded in the fireplace, and I felt something in my chest settle and release. The girl who had sat in the kitchen tonight, who had endured 3 years of silence and exclusion, who had hoped against hope for acceptance that would never come, she was gone now, transformed by fire into someone stronger, someone sure of her own worth. In her place sat a woman who knew the difference between family and blood, between love and obligation, between belonging and fitting in. A woman who had learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away from people who refuse to see your worth. The house was quiet now except for the sound of our breathing, the tick of the clock, the whisper of wind through the trees we had planted together. This was my family now, David and our students, and the life we had built with our own hands, our own choices, our own unwavering commitment to each other. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The morning came too soon and not soon enough. I woke to the smell of David's terrible coffee and the sound of rain against our bedroom windows. For a moment, I lay still, letting the events of the previous night settle back into my consciousness like sediment in still water. My phone showed 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. I scrolled through them without opening any. My mother's desperate pleas, my aunt's justifications, Rebecca's accusations, even messages from cousins I hadn't heard from in years, all suddenly concerned about family unity now that their comfortable narrative had been shattered. "Coffee's ready," David called from the kitchen, his voice carefully neutral. He knew better than to ask if I'd slept well. We both knew I'd spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every word, every look of recognition that had passed between James and me in that hotel kitchen. I found him at our small breakfast table, grading papers with his red pen, steam rising from 2 mismatched mugs. The normalcy of it, the everyday ritual we'd shared for 5 years, felt like a lifeline. "The Hendersons called," he said without looking up. "They heard about what happened at the wedding." I froze with my coffee cup halfway to my lips. The Hendersons were our neighbors, pillars of our small community, the kind of people whose opinion mattered in a town where everyone knew everyone else's business. How did they? Rebecca's maid of honor posted about it on social media. Something about family loyalty and ungrateful relatives. David's jaw tightened. "It's already making the rounds." My stomach dropped. In my family's world, scandal was managed with lawyers and publicists and carefully worded statements to the press. But in our small town, gossip traveled through coffee shops and grocery store checkout lines, through church pews and school pickup lines. By noon, everyone would know that the teacher's wife had somehow ruined her cousin's wedding. "What did Mrs. Henderson say?" David set down his pen and looked at me directly. "She said James Morrison called her this morning. Apparently, he knows her son from college. He wanted to make sure people heard the truth about what happened, not just Rebecca's version." I stared at him. "He called our neighbors?" "He called several people, actually, including the principal at his school and some mutual friends. He's not letting your family control the narrative." David reached across the table and took my hand. "He's protecting your reputation the same way he protected your dignity last night." The phone rang before I could respond. David glanced at the caller ID and shook his head. "Your mother?" Again. Let it go to voicemail. But the ringing stopped and immediately started again. Then again. On the 4th call, I snatched the phone from the counter. "What, Mother?" "Thank God you answered." Her voice was hoarse, strained. "We need to talk. This whole situation has gotten completely out of hand." "Has it? Or has it finally gotten honest?" "People are calling me. Friends, colleagues, board members from the charity committees. They're asking questions about what happened at the wedding. About why James left Rebecca at the altar." "He didn't leave her at the altar. He left her at the reception, after he saw how you treated your own daughter." "That's not..." She stopped, and I heard her take a shaky breath. "Can you come home? Can we sit down like adults and discuss this?" "I am home, Mother. This is my home. This is where I belong. You know what I mean." I looked around our kitchen with its cheerful yellow walls and herb garden on the windowsill, at David grading papers in his weekend clothes, at the life we'd built together from nothing but love and determination. "No, I don't think I do know what you mean anymore." The silence stretched between us, filled with 3 years of accumulated hurt and disappointment. Finally, she spoke again, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Rebecca won't come out of her room. She won't eat, won't talk to anyone. The wedding gifts are still sitting in the foyer, and I don't know what to do with them. The caterer wants to be paid. The photographer is threatening to release the pictures to the tabloids, and your father is talking about suing James for breach of contract." "Sue him for what? For having integrity? For humiliating our family in front of 200 guests?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Your family humiliated itself, Mother." James just held up a mirror. "Please, The word came out broken, desperate. Please come home and help us fix this. Help us figure out how to move forward. I can't fix this for you. This isn't something that can be managed or spun or explained away. This is the consequence of 3 years of cruelty disguised as disappointment. We were never cruel. You seated me in the kitchen at my cousin's wedding. You treated me like hired help because I married a teacher instead of a banker. You spent 3 years pretending I didn't exist because I chose love over status. If that's not cruelty, what is? Another long silence. Then, so quietly I almost missed it. I miss you. The words hit me like a physical blow. I closed my eyes, remembering the mother who had taught me to braid friendship bracelets, who had stayed up all night when I had pneumonia, who had cried at my high school graduation because she was so proud. I miss you too, I whispered. But I miss the mother who loved me unconditionally, not the one who spent 3 years trying to change me into someone else. I just wanted what was best for you. No, you wanted what looked best for you. There's a difference. David looked up from his papers, concern creasing his features. He could hear the pain in my voice, the way this conversation was reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal. I have to go, Mother. Wait, please. I hung up and immediately turned off the phone. My hands were shaking, and David was beside me in an instant, pulling me into his arms. She sounded different, I said against his shoulder. Broken. Good, he said fiercely. She should be broken. They all should be. But even as he said it, I could hear the conflict in his voice. David was a teacher, a man who believed in redemption and second chances, who spent his days helping teenagers navigate the complicated terrain between childhood and adulthood. The part of him that wanted to protect me warred with the part that believed people could change. What if they really are sorry? I asked. What if last night was the wake-up call they needed? Then they'll prove it through their actions, not their words. They'll give you space to heal instead of demanding immediate forgiveness. They'll respect your boundaries instead of trying to manipulate you into coming back. The landline rang, startling us both. David checked the caller ID and frowned. It's the school. On a Saturday, he answered, his voice shifting into professional mode. Hello, Principal Matthews. Yes, I heard. No. She's fine. I understand your concern. I watched his face change as he listened, saw the moment when concern shifted to anger. I see. And you felt this was urgent enough to call on a weekend because... I see. Well, let me be clear about something, Principal Matthews. My wife has done nothing wrong. She attended a family wedding and was treated poorly by her relatives. The fact that one person had the integrity to call out that treatment doesn't reflect poorly on her character, it reflects well on his. He listened for another moment. Then his voice grew cold. If the school board has concerns about my wife's conduct based on social media gossip and family drama, then perhaps this isn't the right school district for us after all. Good day. He hung up and turned to me, his face flushed with anger. They want to meet with you Monday morning. Apparently, some parents are concerned about having a teacher's wife who causes family disruptions involved in school activities. The bottom dropped out of my world. I volunteered at the school library, helped with the drama club, chaperoned field trips. The students knew me, trusted me, came to me when they needed someone to listen. It was one of the few places where I felt truly useful, truly valued. They can't fire you because you're not an employee, but they can make your life difficult. They can ban you from volunteering, exclude you from school events, make you feel unwelcome in ways that are perfectly legal and completely devastating. I sank into a chair, the full scope of last night's consequences finally hitting me. It wasn't just about my family anymore. It was about our life here, our reputation in the community, David's career, everything we'd built together. Maybe I should call my mother back, I said quietly. Maybe I should try to smooth things over, find some way to know. David's voice was firm. Absolutely not. You will not apologize for being treated badly. You will not take responsibility for other people's choices. And you will not sacrifice your integrity to make other people comfortable. But if it affects your job, then we'll find new jobs. We'll move to a different town, start over somewhere else. But we will not let them bully you into submission. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the same fierce protectiveness that had drawn me to him 5 years ago. David, who had never raised his voice in anger, who believed in dialogue and understanding, who always looked for the good in people, was ready to walk away from everything to protect me. "I love you," I said, the words inadequate for what I was feeling. "I love you too," and I meant what I said. "We'll figure this out together, whatever it takes." The rain continued to fall against the windows, washing the world clean. Somewhere across town, Rebecca was hiding in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by the remnants of her perfect wedding. Somewhere in the city, my mother was fielding phone calls and trying to manage a scandal that couldn't be managed. Somewhere, James was probably packing his belongings, preparing to start over in a world where integrity mattered more than social standing. And here, in our kitchen with its mismatched mugs and herb garden, David and I sat together planning our next move, our next chapter, our next choice in favor of love over convenience. The phone rang again, my cell phone, which I'd forgotten to turn back off. David glanced at the screen and his eyebrows rose. "It's James," he said. I stared at the phone, remembering the man who had walked away from everything rather than compromise his principles. After a moment, I answered, "Hello. I hope I'm not calling too early." His voice was tired but steady. "I wanted to check on you. Make sure you got home safely." "I did. Thank you for asking. I also wanted to apologize. I know my actions last night probably made things more difficult for you with your family." I thought about my mother's broken voice, about Rebecca hiding in her room, about the phone calls and text messages and social media posts that were probably still multiplying. "You don't need to apologize for telling the truth. Maybe not, but I know there will be consequences. For both of us." He paused. "I've been thinking about what you said in the kitchen, about choosing love over money. I realized I've been making the opposite choice for months, maybe years. Choosing comfort over conscience, status over substance. And now I'm unemployed, homeless, and single. But for the first time in a long time, I can look at myself in the mirror without flinching. I understood that feeling, that strange lightness that came with finally choosing yourself over other people's expectations." "What will you do now?" "I don't know yet. Start over, I suppose. Find a job somewhere else. Maybe somewhere smaller where people care more about character than connections." He laughed softly. "Maybe I'll become a teacher. I've always admired people who choose service over salary." David looked up from his papers, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Tell him he's welcome to visit if he ever wants to see what that life looks like." I relayed the message, and James's laugh was warmer this time. "I might take you up on that. I have a feeling I'm going to need some examples of people who've built good lives on their own terms." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet kitchen with David, listening to the rain and thinking about the strange turns life could take. 24 hours ago, I had been dreading a wedding, hoping for reconciliation, still believing that family love was worth any price. Now I was facing the possibility of starting over completely, of leaving behind not just my family but our entire life here. "Are you scared?" David asked quietly. I considered the question, taking inventory of my feelings. Was I scared? Of losing our place in this community, of David's career being affected, of the unknown that stretched ahead of us? "No," I said, surprising myself. "I'm not scared. I'm free." And I was. For the first time in 3 years, I was completely, utterly free. Free from the weight of their disapproval, free from the hope that kept me tethered to people who couldn't love me as I was, free from the exhausting work of trying to earn what should have been given freely. "Then we'll be fine," David said simply. "Whatever comes next, we'll be fine." The rain began to slow, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the church bells ringing the hour. Sunday morning in our small town, where people were waking up to coffee and newspapers and the comfortable rhythms of ordinary life, where some of them were probably already talking about the teacher's wife who had somehow ruined a wedding, spinning stories that would grow more dramatic with each telling. Let them talk, let them judge, let them decide what kind of people we were based on gossip and half-truths and social media posts. I knew who I was now, knew what I was worth, knew the difference between belonging and fitting in. And that knowledge, hard-won and painful as it was, felt like the most valuable thing I'd ever possessed. 3 months later, I stood in the doorway of a classroom in a small town 200 miles away, watching David arrange desks for his new students. The morning sun streamed through windows that looked out onto mountains instead of suburbs, onto a landscape that felt like possibility instead of limitation. "The moving truck should be here by noon," I said, checking my phone. "And the principal wants to meet with you at 2 to go over the curriculum." David looked up from his desk arrangement, his face bright with excitement. "I still can't believe they created a position just for me. A combined English and environmental science program. It's like they designed my dream job." I smiled, remembering the phone call that had changed everything. A small mountain town desperately needed teachers, especially ones with David's qualifications and passion. They didn't care about scandal or social media posts or family drama. They cared about education and community and the kind of people who would commit to their students' futures. "And you're sure about the library position?" David asked for the 10th time since we'd arrived. "I'm sure." I was more than sure. The town librarian had welcomed me like a long-lost daughter, thrilled to have someone with my background and volunteer experience. No questions about family disruptions or inappropriate behavior, just genuine excitement about the programs I wanted to implement. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, my heart clenched, expecting another plea from my mother or another accusation from Rebecca. But the name on the screen made me smile. "It's James," I told David. "He got the teaching position in Vermont. Starts next month." "Good for him." David finished arranging the last desk and stood back to survey his work. "It takes courage to start over." I thought about that word courage. 3 months ago, I wouldn't have described myself as courageous. I was the daughter who had disappointed her family, the wife who caused problems, the woman who couldn't seem to fit anywhere. But standing here in this new classroom in this new town, I realized that maybe courage wasn't about being fearless. Maybe it was about being afraid and choosing love anyway. "Do you miss them?" David asked quietly. "Your family?" I considered the question, one I'd been asking myself every day since we'd made the decision to leave. Did I miss the mother who had raised me, who had taught me to be strong and independent, who had somehow forgotten those lessons when it came to my choices? Did I miss the cousins I'd grown up with, the aunts and uncles who had been part of my childhood, the family gatherings that had once felt like home? "I miss who they used to be," I said finally. "Or maybe I miss who I thought they were. But I don't miss feeling like I had to apologize for my life every time I saw them." David nodded, understanding. He'd watched me struggle with the decision to cut contact completely, had held me while I cried over the mother who called every day for 2 weeks and then stopped calling at all, had listened while I worked through the grief of losing people who were still alive but no longer part of my world. "Any regrets?" he asked. I looked around the classroom that would soon be filled with students who didn't know my history, who would judge David on his teaching and me on my actions, not on family drama or social expectations. I thought about the house we'd bought on the edge of town, small and cozy with a view of the mountains and room for the garden I'd always wanted. I thought about the community that had welcomed us without question, that valued teachers and librarians and people who chose service over salary. "None," I said, and meant it completely. A knock on the classroom door interrupted my thoughts. A woman about my age stood there, holding a casserole dish and wearing a warm smile. "You must be the new teacher and his wife," she said. "I'm Sarah Chen. I teach 3rd grade down the hall. I brought you some lunch, figured you'd be too busy unpacking to cook." "That's incredibly kind," David said, accepting the dish gratefully. "I'm David, and this is my wife." "Welcome to Mountain View Elementary," Sarah said to me. "I heard you'll be working with Mrs. Patterson at the library. She's been talking about you non-stop since you accepted the position." "Something about a reading program for at-risk kids?" I felt my face light up. "It's something I've wanted to try for years. Using storytelling and creative writing to help kids who are struggling academically or socially. That sounds amazing. My daughter would love something like that. She's been having a hard time since the divorce, and books have been her escape." As Sarah and I talked about the program, about her daughter, about the community and its needs, I felt something settle into place inside me. This was what belonging felt like, not having to prove your worth or justify your choices, but simply being welcomed for what you could contribute. After Sarah left, David and I sat on his desk sharing the casserole and looking out at the mountains that would be our new horizon. "Think we made the right choice?" he asked. I thought about the question, about the path that had led us here, the wedding that had ended in disaster, the family that had chosen pride over love, the community that had judged us based on gossip instead of character, the courage it had taken to walk away from everything familiar, to start over in a place where nobody knew our story. "I think we made the only choice we could live with," I said. "The choice that honored who we really are instead of who other people wanted us to be." My phone buzzed again, and this time it was a number I didn't recognize. For a moment, I hesitated, remembering all the calls and messages from the past few months. But something made me answer. "Hello, is this David's wife?" The voice was young and certain. "This is going to sound weird, but I'm Rebecca's friend Emma. We were roommates in college." My stomach tightened. "What can I do for you, Emma?" "I just wanted you to know that Rebecca told me what really happened at the wedding. The real story, not the version your family has been telling everyone." She paused. "I wanted to say I'm sorry for how they treated you and for how long it took someone to stand up for you." I was quiet for a moment, processing this unexpected call. "How is Rebecca?" "Honestly, she's a mess. She's been in therapy since the wedding, trying to figure out how she became the kind of person who would let her family treat you that way. She wanted to call you herself, but she wasn't sure you'd want to hear from her." I looked at David, who was watching my face with concern. "What does she want?" "To apologize. To try to understand how things got so bad between your family. To maybe, I don't know, find a way back to being the cousins you used to be." The offer hung in the air between us, loaded with possibility and pain. I thought about the Rebecca I'd grown up with, who had shared secrets and dreams in summer afternoons. I thought about the woman in the wedding dress who had called me nobody, who had stood by while her family humiliated me. "Tell Rebecca I appreciate the call," I said finally, "but I'm not ready for that conversation yet. Maybe someday, but not now." "I understand, but can I tell her something else? Can I tell her that you seem happy, that you've built a good life?" I looked around the classroom where David would inspire students to love learning, thought about the library where I would help kids discover the power of stories, remembered the warm welcome we'd received from people who cared more about character than connections. "Yes," I said, "you can tell her that. You can tell her I'm exactly where I belong." After I hung up, David and I sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun move across the mountains. Somewhere, my family was probably still dealing with the aftermath of choices they'd made, still trying to understand how 3 years of cruelty had led to one night of consequences. Somewhere, Rebecca was in therapy, trying to figure out how to be a better person. Somewhere, James was preparing for his own fresh start, his own chance to build a life based on integrity instead of expectation. And here, in this small mountain town where people valued teachers and librarians and the quiet work of building community, David and I were home, ready to start our new life. David asked, standing and offering me his hand. I took it, feeling the familiar warmth of his palm against mine, the steady strength that had carried us through 3 years of family rejection and into this new beginning. "I've been ready for years," I said. "I just didn't know it yet." We walked out of the classroom together, into the afternoon sunshine and the promise of tomorrow, leaving behind the people who had never learned to love us as we were and stepping into a future we would build with our own hands, our own choices, our own unwavering commitment to each other and the life we'd chosen. The mountains stretched ahead of us, vast and beautiful and full of possibility. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I could breathe.